Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short Story 609, The Scone of Destiny, Intermediate. Barry was a nervous man, and there was nothing that made him more nervous than his Aunt Mildred's annual tea party. It wasn't the tea he was worried about, or the small talk. It was the scones. Aunt Mildred was a scone perfectionist. This year, Barry's wife had made a special one for him to bring. "It's the Scone of Destiny," she said, wrapping it in a special cloth. "You must protect it with your life." One perfect scone for Aunt Mildred's plate. Barry put the scone in a Tupperware box and held it like a precious diamond. He walked down the street, feeling the weight of his destiny. He imagined a dog running at him. He would protect the scone. He saw a gust of wind. The scone would not be moved. He even imagined slipping on a banana peel, holding the scone high in the air as he fell. His mission was clear. He arrived at Aunt Mildred's house. He could hear the low murmur of conversation inside. He took a deep breath, clutching the box tight. His hand, however, was a little sweaty. He fumbled the box. It slipped. The box flew through the air, turning slowly, beautifully. Time seemed to slow down. The box landed on the welcome mat with a soft thud. Barry opened it, his heart pounding. The scone was safe. But a small, dark stain appeared on the top. It wasn't jam or cream, but a mark from the Tupperware. Barry felt his fate was sealed. He was a failure. Aunt Mildred opened the door. "Barry, you're just in time. Where is the scone?" He held out the box, shamefully. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Mildred. I dropped it." She peered at the scone, then started to laugh. "Barry, is that a coffee stain?" He looked closer. The dark stain was not from the Tupperware, but a drop of coffee from his own thermos. The stain looked like a tiny, smiling face. Aunt Mildred took the scone and put it on the plate with the others. "It's the most cheerful scone I've ever seen," she said, smiling. "Now, come in and have some tea." Barry realized his Scone of Destiny had fulfilled its true purpose, to be a perfectly cheerful, slightly messy scone, and to be eaten. He felt the weight lift from his shoulders and smiled. Vocabulary notes. Nervous. Definition: feeling worried or anxious about something that is going to happen. Example: Barry was a nervous man, and there was nothing that made him more nervous than his Aunt Mildred's annual tea party. New example: she felt nervous before her first day at the new job. Similar words: anxious, worried, uneasy, apprehensive. Perfectionist. Definition: a person who wants everything to be perfect and is not happy unless it is. Example: Aunt Mildred was a scone perfectionist. New example: my boss is a real perfectionist. She checks every single detail of the report. Similar words: fussbot, stickler for detail. Fumbled. Definition: to handle something in a clumsy or awkward way. Example: he fumbled the box. It slipped. New example: he was so tired that he fumbled with the keys and couldn't get the door open. Similar words: dropped, mishandled, stumbled. Clutching. Definition: to hold something tightly in your hand. Example: he took a deep breath, clutching the box tight. New example: the child was clutching her mother's hand in the crowded supermarket. Similar words: gripping, holding tightly, grasping. Fate was sealed. Definition: a phrase used to say that a person's future, often a bad one, is now certain and cannot be changed. Example: Barry felt his fate was sealed. He was a failure. New example: when the team's best player got injured in the first half, their fate was sealed and they lost the game. Similar words: destiny was decided, future was determined. Story written by Gemini Pro AI. Image created by re.magics. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, Drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.
Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to dive into a really charming short story called The Scone of Destiny. We'll follow the whole story, and along the way we'll pick up some really great English vocabulary. All right, let's get into it. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been completely stressed out over something that, when you step back, is actually kind of small? Like a tiny mistake at work, or burning dinner just a little bit, or maybe bringing the absolute perfect pastry to a party. Well, if that sounds familiar, you are so going to get our main character today. Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story is all about a guy named Barry, and Barry is, well, a pretty nervous guy. The thing that's making him so anxious today is his Aunt Mildred's annual tea party. It's not the small talk he's worried about. It's the scones. Because his Aunt Mildred, she's a scone perfectionist. And this year, the mission of bringing one single, perfect scone falls to Barry. Now, this is not just any scone. Oh no. His wife has given it this incredibly dramatic name, the Scone of Destiny. And she tells him, you must protect it with your life. No pressure, right? So for Barry, this isn't just a snack. It's a quest. It's his destiny. This brings us to our first vocabulary word, and it describes our hero very perfectly. Nervous. Being nervous just means feeling worried or anxious about something that's about to happen. And the story puts it this way. Barry was a nervous man, and there was nothing that made him more nervous than his Aunt Mildred's annual tea party. And why is he so nervous? Well, it all comes down to this word, perfectionist. A perfectionist is someone who needs everything to be absolutely perfect, otherwise they're not happy. The story tells us Aunt Mildred was a scone perfectionist. So now we get it, right? Barry has to bring a perfect scone to a perfectionist. The stage is set. And so Barry begins his perilous journey. It's just a walk to his aunt's house, but in his mind, with the scone of destiny in his hands, his nervous imagination is just running wild. He's not just carrying a plastic container. Nope. The story says he's holding the box like a precious diamond. I mean, that just paints such a great picture, doesn't it? It shows you just how intense this pressure feels for him. This scone is a priceless jewel.
And the way he's holding it, that brings us to our next word, clutching. To clutch something means you're holding it super tightly, usually because you're scared or really determined. As Barry gets to the door, the story says he's clutching the box tight. I mean, he is gripping this thing for dear life.
And this is where we get a peek inside Barry's head. And oh boy, is it a wild ride. On this short walk, he's imagining these crazy, heroic scenarios. He's fighting off a dog to protect the scone. He's shielding it from a powerful gust of wind. He even imagines slipping on a banana peel, but somehow holding the scone up in the air, safe and sound. His anxiety is basically turning this walk into an action movie. And just like that, he arrives. He survived all the imaginary dangers, and he's standing right there at Aunt Mildred's front door. This is it, the finish line. But, sometimes the biggest threat isn't what you expect. After all that, worrying about dogs and wind and banana peels, the problem came from inside. His own nervousness makes his hand a little sweaty. And right at that crucial moment as he's clutching the box, it slips. He fumbled it.
And that action, that clumsy drop, gives us our next word, fumbled. To fumble something is to handle it awkwardly. You can just see it in slow motion, can't you? The box tumbling through the air, all because of one clumsy, sweaty-palmed fumble.
He scrambles to pick it up, heart just hammering in his chest, and he opens it. And for a second, there's this wave of relief. The scone is okay. But then he sees it. A small, dark stain right on the top. It's not perfect anymore. The Scone of Destiny is flawed. And to Barry, this is just total, absolute failure. The story uses a fantastic English idiom here. It says Barry felt his fate was sealed. When you say your fate is sealed, it means you think the outcome is set in stone and there's nothing you can do to change it. For Barry, in this moment, his terrible fate is to face his perfectionist aunt with a failed scone. But is his fate really sealed? This is where the story takes this wonderful little turn. Aunt Mildred opens the door, and Barry, completely ashamed, shows her the ruined scone. The disaster he's been dreading is finally here. Or is it? And here we see the whole point of the story, all in one shot. It's all about perspective. Barry looks at the scone and sees a stain, a ruinous mark, a symbol of his failure. But when Aunt Mildred leans in to look, she sees something completely different. That little coffee stain, it looks like a tiny smiling face. His failure is her delight. And then she says this absolutely wonderful line. It's the most cheerful scone I've ever seen. And with that one sentence, poof, all of Barry's anxiety just melts away. His failure actually made something special and unique. Turns out, the perfectionist wasn't really looking for perfection after all. What a great little story, right? Okay, before we wrap this up, let's do a quick review of the vocabulary we picked up on Barry's journey. So we learned 5 key things today. We had nervous, which was Barry all over, perfectionist, which is what he thought his aunt was, clutching, that super tight grip he had on the box, fumbled, the clumsy mistake he made at the door, and that great idiom, fate was sealed, which is how he felt right before everything turned out great. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that Barry was so worried about the scone being perfect that he almost missed its true destiny. It wasn't meant to be flawless. It was meant to be perfectly cheerful and to bring a little unexpected joy to the party. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We all try so hard to be perfect, just like Barry did. But sometimes it's the little mistakes, the unexpected stains, the fumbles that make things and people a lot more interesting and cheerful. So I'll leave you with this question. When has an imperfection actually made something better in your life? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.